Close your eyes. The smell of salt air mixed with diesel fuel. The sound of a ship's horn echoing across the harbor. That's the moment everything changed forever. In this video, we're going back to the 1960s, to the heartbreak and hope that defined Italian emigration to America. 8 things that those who sailed across the Atlantic will never forget. The memories that still wake them up at night, decades later. Let's remember together. You're standing on the dock in Naples or Genoa, and you can't stop turning around. Behind you, your mother is crying, but she's trying to hide it behind her black shawl. Your father shakes your hand one more time, harder than he ever has, because Italian men don't embrace in public, but his eyes are red. Your little sister is holding a doll you carved for her from olive wood, and she doesn't understand why everyone is crying. She thinks you're going on an adventure. She doesn't know you won't see her wedding, you won't meet her children. The gangplank is rough under your shoes, the same shoes your father resoled 3 times because there wasn't money for new ones. The ship horn blows again and your mother's cry cuts through everything. That sound, you hear it for the rest of your life. Every foghorn, every train whistle brings you back to this dock. You're 23 years old, and you're leaving everyone you've ever loved for a country where you don't speak the language, where you don't know a single street. In your pocket, you have an address written on paper your sister tore from her school notebook. Your cousin's apartment in Brooklyn. That piece of paper is your entire future. For those who sailed, that goodbye was the moment childhood ended. Not gradually. All at once. On a dock that smelled like fish and fear and desperation. If these memories are bringing back your Italy, subscribe so we can remember together. Now let's continue. In your suitcase, wrapped in your mother's wedding tablecloth, is a piece of Parmigiano Reggiano. Not the whole wheel. Your family couldn't afford that. Just a piece your father cut from the one hanging in the cantina, the one they were saving for Christmas. He wrapped it himself, his hands shaking, and he told you, "When you eat this in America, remember who you are." The tablecloth still smells like the lavender your nonna grew in her garden. You can smell it even now in the ship's hold, where 200 people are packed into spaces meant for cargo. The cheese makes it 3 days before it starts to sweat in the heat. By the time you reach America, it's covered in white mold. You scrape it off and eat it anyway, crying in a bathroom in Ellis Island because it tastes like your father's hands and your mother's prayers and everything you've left behind. Years later, in America, you'll buy Parmigiano at the Italian store in your neighborhood. The owner is from Calabria, not Emilia, but he understands. Real Parmigiano, imported, costs a week's wages. You buy it anyway. Every time. Because that cheese is not food. It's an identity you're afraid of losing. You memorized your mother's face, but you forgot to memorize her voice. This is what haunts you most. On the ship, in those 15 days crossing the Atlantic, you replayed every conversation, every time she called you for dinner, every prayer she said at your bedside when you were sick. You were so sure you'd remember forever. But voices fade faster than faces. By the first year in America, you can see her perfectly in your mind. The way she tied her apron, the silver in her hair, the small scar on her hand from when she grabbed a hot pan. But when you try to hear her voice, it's like listening to a radio between stations. Static and fragments. You write letters every month. She can't read, so your sister reads them aloud, and your mother dictates responses. Your mama says she's proud of you. Your mama says the olive trees are full this year. Your mama says she prays for you every night. But you can't hear her saying these things. When she dies 7 years later, before you've saved enough money to go back, you receive a letter from your sister. Your mother's last words were your name. Your sister writes what she said, but you can't hear it. For the rest of your life, you'll stop when you hear older Italian women talking in the street, just to hear that cadence, that tone, searching for an echo of what you've lost. The ship moves through the night, and you can't sleep. Nobody can. 200 people in the hold, and everyone is awake, staring at the ceiling or the darkness or nothing. Someone is crying quietly in the corner. Someone else is praying the rosary, the beads clicking in rhythm with the waves. You're thinking about soil, the red soil of your family's land. 3 hectares that your family worked for 200 years. Your father's hands were permanently stained that color, under his fingernails, in the creases of his palms. That soil grew the tomatoes your mother turned into sauce every August. It grew the wheat your family took to the mill. It grew your childhood, every memory you have, and you signed it away. Before you left, you and your brothers stood in your father's kitchen and signed papers transferring your share to your oldest brother. Because someone had to stay. Someone had to keep the land. And you were the expendable one. Not the oldest, not the youngest. The middle son with strong hands and no prospects. Your brother didn't look at you when you signed. He knew what it cost. That land was your inheritance, your connection to every generation that came before you. And you traded it for a ship ticket and a promise of factory work in a country that doesn't want you. In America, you'll live in cities where dirt is something you wash off the sidewalk. Your children will grow up never putting their hands in soil, never understanding that earth has a smell, a texture, a memory. You'll buy a small house in New Jersey eventually, and you'll plant tomatoes in the backyard. But it's not the same soil. It doesn't smell right. The tomatoes don't taste right. Nothing grows the same way. You're a man without land, and that's a kind of death Italians understand in their bones. Your best friend didn't make it onto the ship. Not because he didn't have a ticket, because his mother got sick 2 days before departure, and he couldn't leave. You stood on the deck watching him on the dock, getting smaller and smaller, and you both knew. You'd never see each other again. You grew up together. Same street, same school, same dreams of something bigger than the village. You practiced English together from a book his uncle sent from America. You made plans. You'd share an apartment in New York. You'd work the same factory. You'd save money and bring your families over together. You had it all planned. But his mother got sick and he stayed and the ship sailed. You wrote letters for 3 years. His responses got shorter, more distant. He met a girl from the next village. He took over his father's shop. He stopped mentioning America. Eventually the letters stopped. You heard from your sister that he got married, had children, never left the province. When you finally go back to visit 25 years later, you'll see him in the piazza. He's older, grayer, thicker around the middle. For a moment you're both 23 again, full of dreams. Then his son calls him and he excuses himself, and you both know. You live in different worlds now. You made different choices. He has grandchildren who run through the same streets you played in. You have grandchildren who don't speak Italian. Neither of you knows if you chose right. That uncertainty lives in you both forever. You're halfway across the Atlantic when you realize you'll never hear church bells the same way again. Every Italian village has its own bells, different tones, different rhythms. You grew up knowing time by those bells. Morning mass, noon, evening prayers, weddings on Saturday, funerals during the week. Those bells marked every moment of your life. Your baptism, your first communion, the day your grandfather died. The bells rang and the entire village knew. Everyone stopped. Everyone crossed themselves. Everyone was connected by that sound. On the ship, there are no bells, just the engine's constant rumble and the waves. In America, you'll live in a neighborhood with a Catholic church. They have bells, but they're electric. They sound flat, mechanical. They don't echo off mountains. They don't carry across valleys. They don't make the air vibrate in your chest. Your children will grow up thinking bells are just noise, just a signal. They won't understand that bells are a language, a heartbeat, a connection between heaven and earth, and everyone in between. On Sundays, you'll go to that American church with the electric bells, and you'll close your eyes and try to remember. The way the bells sounded in your village, the way they echoed off the stone buildings, the way everyone stopped what they were doing to listen, the way it felt to be part of something bigger than yourself. That's what you left behind, not just bells, but the understanding that everyone shares the same moment, the same sound, the same sacred connection. Take a moment. Close your eyes again. Can you feel it? The rough rope of the ship's railing under your hands, the cold Atlantic spray on your face, the weight of everything you're carrying in that small suitcase. That's the Italy we're remembering today. The Italy that lives in our hearts even though we're thousands of miles away. The Italy we had to leave to survive. Let's continue. In your pocket you carry photographs, not many. Your family couldn't afford a photographer often. There's one from your sister's confirmation. Everyone is standing stiff in their Sunday clothes, squinting in the sun. Your mother's hand is on your sister's shoulder. Your father stands apart, uncomfortable in his one good suit. There's a photograph from your cousin's wedding. The whole family gathered in front of the church. You're in the back row, young, your hair slicked back, trying to look confident. And there's one of just your mother, taken by a street photographer in the market. She's not smiling, she looks tired. That photograph is in your wallet. You take it out on the ship, in the hold, when everyone else is sleeping. You study her face like you're preparing for an exam. Every line, every detail. You're trying to memorize her because you know. Photographs fade, they crease, they get damaged. This might be all you have. In America, your children will find these photographs after you die. They'll ask who these people are. You'll realize you never told them, not really. You mentioned your mother, your father, your village, but you never told them about the way your father sang when he pruned the olive trees, the way your mother could tell when bread was ready just by the smell, the way your sister laughed. These photographs show people your children never met, a country they never saw, a life that ended the day you got on that ship. They'll look at these faded images and try to understand. But how do you explain a whole world in a photograph? How do you make them feel what you felt? The photographs are evidence that you existed before America, before you became an immigrant, before you became their father. You were someone else once, someone who belonged somewhere, someone whose mother knew his voice. You carry a prayer card from your village church, San Giuseppe, Saint Joseph, the patron saint of workers. Your mother pressed it into your hand at the dock. She couldn't speak. She just pushed this card into your palm and closed your fingers around it. It's the size of a playing card. On one side, an image of the saint. On the other, a prayer in Italian. The card still smells like the church. Incense and old stone and centuries of prayers. Every night on the ship, you take it out and pray. Not because you're particularly religious. Your father rarely went to Mass. But because this card touched your mother's hands, because it came from the church where you were baptized, where your grandparents were married, where your family has prayed for generations. In America, you'll keep this card in your wallet for 50 years. The image will fade, the paper will soften and crack at the edges, the prayer will become almost illegible, but you'll never throw it away. Sometimes in moments of fear or loneliness or doubt, you'll take it out and hold it. Just hold it. Because it's proof. Proof that you came from somewhere. Proof that someone loved you enough to give you protection for the journey. Proof that you were blessed once, in a stone church in a village most Americans couldn't find on a map. Your children will find this card in your wallet after you die. They'll ask what it means. You'll try to explain, but how do you explain that this card is more than paper? That it's a connection to every generation that came before you? That it's the last physical thing your mother gave you? That sometimes, when you hold it, you can almost feel her hand closing your fingers around it, almost hear her whispered prayer for your safety. They won't understand, they can't. They've never had to leave home with nothing but a prayer card and hope. These 8 moments weren't just memories. They were the cost of survival. The price of a better future for children who would never fully understand what was sacrificed. For those who sailed to America in the 1960s, leaving wasn't an adventure. It was an amputation. You cut yourself off from everyone and everything you knew, and you learned to live with the phantom pain. The village you left kept growing without you. Your friends got older. Your parents grew gray. Your siblings built lives you only heard about in letters, and you built a different life in America. A good life, maybe, a more prosperous life. But always in the quiet moments you wondered, what if you had stayed? Who would you have become? Your children are Americans. Your grandchildren don't speak Italian. The village you left is full of people who remember you as that young person who sailed away decades ago. You exist in 2 worlds and fully belong to neither. That's the immigrant story nobody tells. Not the success, not the struggle, but the permanent sense of being split in 2. The Italy we remember lives in these moments of leaving, in the salt air and the ship's horn, in your mother's face and your father's handshake, in the cheese and the photographs and the prayer card. What do you remember most about leaving? Share in the comments. Subscribe to Remember Together. Ciao, and keep the memories alive.